So we have so many sacred plants in the Americas. And in fact, I came to the conclusion that we cannot understand Amerindian population without reference to these sacred plants, we including the tobacco, of course. The use of sacred plants goes all the way San Pedro cactus, 8,600 BC, and then we have coca, corn beer as well, cacao, peyote, anaranthera, tobacco, amanitas, brumancia, Ilex mate, Ilex paraguayensis, Ribea corimbosa, oluluki, Ilex Josa datura, etc. So we have very ancient use of these plants. Of course, we all know the Chabin famous representation of the San Pedro cactus. And then in Texas here and in Mexico, you found peyote going back 4,000 before Christ, and then being used today still by the Huichol, the Tarahumara, the Cora, and many other indigenous groups in Mexico with beautiful, iconography and rituals to the conservation of our planet. So, for instance, the peyote, an elder from the community of San Andres Cojamiata, Hikuri, the peyote, is the great teacher who guides us. Through Hikuri, we know ourselves. We connect with nature and the gods. Hikuri manifests itself in the voice of the Kauyumari deer who tell us what to do, whom to remember, and to worship. It unites us with our past, our family, and our spouse. From it, we learn art, songs, ceremonies, and the offerings that we must make. It has always been there to guide us, to remind us who we are and who we should always be. Again, the question, why do you take ayahuasca, Don Emilio, is to clarify your mind and to strengthen your body. Completely different, of visions. It's not visions are not so important. I must say, the ayahuasca experience very often is to diagnose or to see the spirits, but not to see how beautiful, is to ask them practical, how can I heal this person, what plant to use, etc., which is very different from the Western point of view of, visions. And so, for him, health and wisdom are two sides of the same coin. So, most important of all, he said, ayahuasca is a doctor, toe is a doctor, tobacco is a doctor. So the idea of plant teachers. I discovered the same idea of plant teacher when I was in the Sibundoy Valley working with the Kamsa and the Ingano. So I met Salvador Chindoy Schultes. I had been working with him and met his son, Miguel Chindoy. And then Miguel had an apprentice, and he said, okay, this is the garden of science. So all these plants, the same idea. And then I was working with the Shipibo in Santa Rosa de Pirococha. I spent another month taking ayahuasca, doing the diet. And I was, of course, interested in the plants. And Don Basilio said, if you know the song of a plant, you don't need the plant. So the song, you have the same effect. The idea of the song is the quintessence, effective for the healing. So there was another discovery of mine.